My parents sold my home behind my back to pay for my sister Brianna and her $120,000 wedding. They literally called me over the sound of clinking champagne glasses, laughing as they thanked me for the generous wedding present. I did not scream or cry. I just smiled into the phone and told them they might want to check their mailbox. The color must have completely drained from their faces when they opened that envelope, because what they did not know was that I had spent the last 3 months secretly acquiring the debt on their pristine suburban mansion. They thought they sold my home to fund a party. They had no idea I was about to legally foreclose on theirs. My name is Jada. I am 35 years old and I work as a commercial real estate investor. Before I share exactly how I dismantled my family toxic facade, piece by piece, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to protect your peace from the very people who were supposed to protect you. The nightmare began on a rainy Tuesday evening. I had just returned from a grueling 2-week business trip across the country. Evaluating commercial properties and negotiating contracts takes a toll on your body and mind. All I wanted was a hot shower and my own bed. I dragged my heavy suitcase through the polished marble lobby of my upscale downtown condo building. I nodded to the night concierge, feeling the familiar comfort of returning to my sanctuary. I had bought this condo when I was just starting out working double shifts to afford the down payment. It was my pride and joy, boasting floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. I rode the elevator up to the 15th floor, my mind already drifting to the takeout I planned to order. I walked down the quiet carpeted hallway and stopped at my door. I slid my key into the lock, but it would not turn. I jiggled it, assuming the mechanism was just sticky. I pulled the key out, wiped it on my coat, and tried again. Nothing. The cylinder was completely different. Panic began to flutter in my chest. I checked the apartment number, thinking my exhaustion had led me to the wrong floor, but it was my door. My welcome mat was gone. The small potted plant I kept in the hallway was missing. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. I knocked, assuming maybe building maintenance had changed the locks for some emergency reason. A woman I had never seen before opened the door. She was wearing a bathrobe and looking at me with clear annoyance. "Can I help you?" she asked. I stood there frozen, staring past her shoulder. My custom leather sofa was gone. The modern art pieces I had curated for years were missing. In their place were floral curtains and unfamiliar beige furniture. "What are you doing in my apartment?" I demanded, my voice rising with panic. The woman frowned and pulled her robe tighter. "Your apartment. We moved in yesterday. The sellers handed over the keys on Friday. I think you need to leave before I call security." She slammed the door in my face. The heavy thud echoed in the silent hallway. I backed away, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. My mind raced through impossible scenarios. Identity theft, a massive administrative error, a nightmare I simply needed to wake up from. I stumbled back to the elevator and rode it down to the lobby. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip my suitcase handle. I approached the building manager, David, who looked up from his desk with a sudden expression of deep discomfort. "David," I said, my voice trembling. "There is a stranger in my apartment. The locks are changed. Someone is in there." David swallowed hard, adjusting his glasses. "Jada, I am so sorry. We assumed you knew. Your parents handled the final walkthrough on Friday. The sale officially closed last week." I grabbed the edge of the marble desk to steady myself. The lobby seemed to spin around me. "What sale? I never listed my property. I never signed anything." David looked at me with genuine pity. The title was held jointly. "Warren and Patricia handled the paperwork with the real estate agent. They told us you were relocating for your business, and they were managing the transition to save you time." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs completely. I thanked David blindly and sank into one of the plush velvet sofas in the corner of the lobby. My hands shook uncontrollably as I pulled out my phone. I opened the county property tax website, navigating the familiar interface with clumsy fingers. I typed in my address, The screen loaded, bringing up the official public record. My heart pounded against my ribs. There it was in black and white. The property had been transferred, sold for a substantial amount of cash. The buyers were listed as a newlywed couple. The sellers listed were Warren and Patricia. I stared at the names, trying to make sense of the betrayal staring back at me. A memory from over a decade ago hit me with sickening clarity. When I was 22 years old, fresh out of college and eager to make my first real estate investment, I had found this condo. It was a steal, but my credit history was practically non-existent because I had always paid cash for everything. Warren and Patricia had offered to co-sign the deed. They spun it as a supportive parental gesture. They told me it was the only way I could secure a favorable interest rate. I had paid the down payment. I had paid every single mortgage bill for the last 13 years. I had paid the property taxes, the maintenance fees, the insurance. But because their names remained on the deed alongside mine as a legal technicality, they had the legal authority to authorize a sale. I had trusted them completely. They were my parents. The idea that they would exploit a legal loophole to sell the roof over my head without my knowledge was something I could not have imagined in my darkest nightmares. I sat in the lobby of the building I used to call home, surrounded by wealthy residents coming and going, while I effectively became homeless. I scrolled through the transaction history. The mortgage had been paid off with the sale, and the remaining equity, the hundreds of thousands of dollars I had built up over a decade of relentless hard work, had been dispersed to a bank account I did not control. My own parents had stolen my home. They packed up my belongings, sold my sanctuary, and kept the profit. For years, I had played the role of the responsible, quiet daughter. I had endured their constant criticism about my lifestyle. They always told me I was too focused on work, too unfeminine, too obsessed with independence. They constantly compared me to my younger sister, Brianna. Brianna was the golden child. She was 28, beautiful, charismatic, and entirely focused on social climbing. She lived for the aesthetic of Black excellence without actually putting in the work. Our parents funded her pageant days, her elite sorority dues, and her expensive vacations, all in the name of securing her a high-value husband. I was the scapegoat who paid her own way and minded her own business, and now they had stripped me of my most valuable asset. I needed to hear them say it. I needed to understand how they could commit such an act of absolute cruelty against their own flesh and blood. I pulled up my mother contact and hit dial. The phone rang 3 times before Patricia answered. Through the receiver, I could immediately hear the festive background noise. Soft jazz music playing, people chattering, and the distinct sharp clink of crystal champagne glasses. "Hello, Jada." Patricia answered, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness and a slight buzz of alcohol. "It is so good to hear from you. We are just having a little pre-wedding celebration dinner with Connor parents." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Mom, why is there a strange woman living in my apartment? Why are the locks changed?" I heard a brief pause on the line. The background noise muffled slightly, as if she had walked into another room. "Oh, you got back early," she said, completely unbothered. "We thought your trip lasted until the weekend. We moved your boxes into a storage unit downtown. I will text you the access code tomorrow." "You moved my boxes into a storage unit?" I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "You sold my home. You stole my equity." Patricia sighed, an exaggerated sound of annoyance. "Do not be so dramatic, Jada. You know how tight things have been. Brianna is marrying Connor next month. His family is prominent in the community. They are paying for half the wedding, and we are expected to cover the other half. The floral arrangements and the catering alone are astronomical. We could not exactly tell them we did not have the liquid cash. It would ruin the family image." I sat frozen, unable to comprehend the sheer audacity. "You sold my condo to pay for Brianna's wedding. Your sister deserves a perfect day," Patricia continued, her tone hardening into that familiar, condescending edge she always used with me. "You are a single woman who works 80 hours a week. You are barely ever at that apartment anyway. You do not need a luxury condo to sleep in. Warren and I helped you secure that property years ago, so it is only fair that the equity goes back into the family when the family needs it." Think of it as your generous wedding present to your sister. Warren's voice suddenly echoed in the background, loud and jovial. Tell Jada we said thank you for pitching in for the ice sculptures. I heard my mother chuckle. We really do appreciate it, darling, Patricia said. This wedding is a massive investment in our family's social standing. Connor family is very well connected. This elevates all of us. You can find a nice, sensible rental somewhere closer to your office. I will call you tomorrow to discuss the storage unit. Enjoy your evening. The line went dead. I lowered the phone from my ear. They had stolen my home, my safe haven, my financial equity to buy ice sculptures and imported flowers for a party. They justified leaving me on the street because my life as an unmarried working woman held absolutely no value to them compared to Brianna marrying a wealthy white man. They genuinely believed I would just accept it. They thought I would quietly rent a cheap apartment and continue being the obedient invisible daughter who funded their delusions of grandeur. I was still sitting on the lobby sofa, staring blankly at the marble floor, when my phone chimed in my hand. A text message banner popped across the screen. It was from Brianna. I opened the message. It was a mirror selfie. Brianna was standing in an upscale bridal boutique wearing a custom Vera Wang gown that easily cost more than a luxury car. The dress was dripping in intricate lace and imported silk. She looked radiant, smug, and completely triumphant. The caption read, "Found the perfect dress. Mom said you were happy to help cover the remaining balance. Thanks for the condo money, big sis. A spinster like you did not need all that space anyway. See you at the rehearsal." I stared at the photo. I looked at the delicate lace, the perfect lighting, the absolute entitlement in her smile. A normal person might have broken down right there in the lobby. A normal person might have thrown their phone, screamed at the injustice, or dissolved into tears. But the tears did not come. Instead, the crushing weight of betrayal evaporated, leaving behind a terrifying cold and absolute focus. My parents and my sister had mistaken my quiet nature for weakness. They had mistaken my independence for submission. They thought because I did not flaunt my wealth on social media or demand attention at family dinners that I was powerless. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I did not just own one condo. I owned a commercial real estate empire. I had spent the last decade building a portfolio of properties, acquiring distressed debt, and mastering the ruthless game of corporate acquisitions. I knew how to dismantle companies block by block, and I certainly knew how to dismantle a family built on lies. I closed the photo of Brianna in her stolen dress. I opened my contacts and dialed a number I knew by heart. Terrence picked up on the second ring. Terrence was my closest friend and the most aggressive real estate attorney in the city. "Jada," he answered, his deep voice vibrating through the speaker. "You are back from Dallas. How did the negotiations go?" "The negotiations went fine," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "But I have a new project for you. I need you to run a full financial background check on my parents, Warren and Patricia. I need to know every mortgage, every credit card debt, every loan they have ever taken out. I need their complete financial profile by tomorrow morning." Terrence paused, recognizing the dangerous calm in my tone. "What did they do, Jada?" "They sold my home to pay for Brianna's wedding," I said. "They exploited the old co-sign agreement. I am sitting in the lobby with my suitcase." I heard Terrence exhale sharply, followed by the sound of him pulling out a legal pad. "Tell me you are going to destroy them," he said. I stood up, gripping the handle of my suitcase. My posture was perfectly straight. "I am going to take everything they value," I replied. "Find their debt, Terrence. Find whoever holds the paper on their beloved suburban mansion. I want to buy it." The counterstrike had officially begun. I walked out of the building into the cool night air, leaving my old life behind, and stepping into a war they had no idea they had just started. I pull my sleek black SUV into the subterranean garage of the Glasshouse Residences. It is one of the most exclusive long-term luxury rentals in the city. The valet nods respectfully as he takes my keys. I do not look like a woman who was just rendered homeless by her own flesh and blood. I look like exactly what I am, a woman who owns the room. I grab my 2 emergency overnight bags from the trunk and head up to the penthouse suite I leased over the phone during my cab ride from my stolen condo. The suite is immaculate. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white marble countertops, and minimalist leather furniture. It lacks the warmth of my old place, but warmth is a liability right now. I need a war room, and this will do perfectly. I drop my bags onto the king-size bed and unzip them. The mechanical sound of the zipper echoes in the quiet room. As I pull out my tailored charcoal blazer, a sharp memory slices through my focused calm. I remember standing in my parents' suburban kitchen at 19 years old, proudly holding my real estate license certification. I had studied for months while working the night shift at a diner. I remember my father, Warren, barely glancing up from his golf magazine. "Real estate is a gritty business, Jada," he had said, his voice dripping with condescension. "It is unladylike. You are going to be out there arguing with contractors and haggling with bankers. Women in our circles should be softening the room, not fighting for the deed. Why can you not focus on something more elegant like your sister?" I toss the blazer onto the mattress and pull out my silk blouses. Elegant. That was always Patricia and Warren's favorite word. Elegant meant palatable. Elegant meant marketable. I reach into the side pocket of my bag and pull out my watch case. The cool metal against my fingertips triggers another memory. I was 21, eating instant noodles in my cramped college dorm when Patricia called to ask if she could borrow $200. She claimed it was for an emergency utility bill. A week later, I saw the photos on social media. That $200 went straight toward Brianna's $5,000 custom gown for the Miss Black Heritage Regional Pageant. Brianna was their masterpiece. From the moment she could walk, my parents funneled tens of thousands of dollars into grooming her. Pageant entry fees, vocal coaches' etiquette classes. When Brianna went to college, they happily paid the exorbitant dues for an elite, historically black sorority. I remember Patricia lecturing me while she steamed Brianna's initiation dress. "Brianna is an investment, Jada. A high-value husband requires a high-value presentation. She is going to elevate this family name." They poured everything into her because she fit their twisted aesthetic of black excellence. They wanted the country club memberships. The society page mentions the perfectly curated holiday cards to hand out at our local megachurch. Brianna was a living, breathing accessory designed to attract wealth. I was the dark-skinned, practical daughter who liked numbers and construction sites. In their eyes, I was a lost cause. The unglamorous workhorse who would never bring a wealthy man home to elevate their status. I walk into the master bathroom and place my toiletries on the glass shelf. I look at my reflection in the mirror. My parents spent my entire life making me feel like I took up too much space. They trained Brianna to believe my purpose was to serve as her stepping stone. Even the CO sign on my condo 13 years ago was never about helping me. Warren had casually mentioned to his church friends that he was securing property for his daughters. It was just another talking point for his Sunday morning networking, designed to make him look like a benevolent patriarch. They assumed my silence meant I accepted my role as the family scapegoat. They assumed that because I did not fight for their attention, I was too weak to fight for my assets. I walk back into the main living area and pour myself a glass of sparkling water from the minibar. I stand by the window, looking down at the glittering city lights. My parents are currently sitting in a country club dining room, sweating through their designer clothes, desperate to impress Connor and his wealthy white family. They are serving imported wine paid for with stolen money, praying nobody notices the cracks in their foundation. They wanted high value. They wanted ruthlessness masked as elegance. They have no idea that the gritty, unladylike daughter they discarded actually bought the commercial building they are dining in last year. I sip my water, letting the icy liquid ground me. There is no grief left in my chest. There is only geometry. A cold, precise calculation of how to dismantle their lives structure by structure. I walk over to the marble kitchen island and open my laptop. The screen illuminates the dark room. I have an appointment with Terrence tomorrow morning and I need to be ready. It is time to stop packing and start plotting. The morning sun glares off the glass facade of Terrence's downtown law firm as I step out of my car. I bypass the receptionist with a familiar nod and push through the heavy mahogany doors of his corner office. Terrence is already at his desk. He does not offer me coffee or sympathetic platitudes. He knows me far too well for that. He just slides a thick manila folder across the polished wood of his desk the moment I sit down. "It is worse than I thought, Jada," he says, his deep voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. "They are not just living paycheck to paycheck. They are running a Ponzi scheme on their own lives." I open the folder. The first page is a comprehensive summary of their liabilities. My eyes scan the numbers, and a harsh, humorless laugh escapes my throat. My parents, the self-proclaimed pillars of the community. The beautifully dressed couple who sit in the front pew of Grace Fellowship megachurch every Sunday, are flat broke. Terrence leans back in his leather chair, crossing his arms over his chest. They have maxed out 5 different premium credit cards. They took out a high-interest personal loan just to cover their annual dues at the Oak Ridge Country Club. And that massive building fund donation your father bragged about last month at the church gala, financed through a predatory line of credit. I trace my finger over the printed bank statements, shaking my head at the absolute absurdity of it all. They bought into the illusion of black excellence so deeply that they forgot it actually requires capital. They wanted the unwavering respect of the church elders and the bitter envy of their country club peers. They wanted to be the affluent family that everyone admired from afar. But it was all a fragile house of cards held together by minimum monthly payments and crippling interest rates. They were bleeding out just to maintain a facade. And then came Connor, Terrence says, tapping a silver pen against his desk, or more specifically Connor's parents, Charles and Victoria. Generational wealth, old money. The kind of people who write checks without looking at the balance. Terrence pulls out a copy of a vendor contract he managed to pull from the financial records. Connor's family insisted on a massive society wedding. They wanted the towering ice sculptures, the 10-piece live orchestra, the imported caviar. And because they view themselves as fiercely traditional, they expected the bride's family to handle half the expenses, a strict 50-50 split. I look at the exact timeline of their financial panic laid out in the documents. Warren and Patricia were backed into a corner of their own making. If they admitted they could not afford a $60,000 share of a $120,000 wedding, they would lose their carefully curated image instantly. They would become the impoverished black in-laws to Connor's wealthy white family. In my parents' minds, that was a fate worse than death. They could not let Brianna lose her high-value catch, I say quietly, staring at the staggering numbers. And they could not let Charles and Victoria know they were complete frauds. Exactly, Terrence confirms. They needed liquid cash, and they needed it immediately. Their credit was completely tapped out. No reputable bank would give them another dime. But then Warren remembered the paperwork from 13 years ago, the CO sign on your condo. Terrence flips to the last page of the packet. Your property had appreciated significantly over the last decade. Because you paid down the principal so aggressively, there was over $300,000 in pure equity sitting there. To them, it looked like a dormant piggy bank just waiting to be cracked open. They triggered the sale forged ahead with a shady realtor they know from church, and bypassed you entirely using the old joint title. I close the folder, letting the sharp geometric reality of their betrayal settle into my mind. They did not just steal my home because they were greedy. They stole my home because they were terrified. They sacrificed my financial security, my shelter, my decade of relentless hard work just to buy a temporary mask of wealth. They threw me to the wolves so they could sip champagne with people who would look down on them if they ever knew the truth. Look at this, Terrence says, pointing to a specific highlighted charge on the second page. $10,000 to a custom bridal boutique. $5,000 for bespoke floral deposits. Your mother even paid for Connor's mother to have a luxury spa weekend to bond before the wedding. I shake my head, feeling a wave of deep clinical disgust. Patricia is terrified of Connor's mother. She probably spent that entire weekend agreeing with every condescending microaggression Cynthia threw at her just to secure Brianna's spot in their family tree. Terrence nods, his expression grim. It gets worse. They have been siphoning the condo money for 3 weeks. They paid the wedding vendors in full with cash. They wanted to look like big shots tossing around wealth like it was nothing. Whatever is left over is probably going toward paying off the country club so they do not get their membership revoked before the rehearsal dinner. I stand up and walk to the floor-to-ceiling window of Terrence's office, looking down at the morning traffic crawling through the city streets. The blinding rage that should be boiling in my veins is entirely absent. In its place is a profound, icy clarity. My parents are not financial masterminds. They are desperate actors, terrified of the curtain closing on their performance. They thought that by sacrificing the unladylike daughter, they could secure their permanent place in the upper echelon of society. They think they got away with it, I say, my voice perfectly level against the glass. They think because the money is already spent on non-refundable deposits and perishable goods that I have no recourse. They assume I will just accept the loss because fighting it would mean exposing the family to public shame. Terrence smiles. It is a predatory shark-like smile that I have always appreciated about him. They rely on your silence, Jada. They always have. They think you are too dignified to drag them into a messy court battle. They are right about one thing, I reply, turning back to face him. I am not going to drag them into court over the condo. That is too slow, too messy. By the time a judge unravels the CO sign loophole, the wedding will be over, and they will have gotten exactly what they wanted. They will have taken their photos, eaten their caviar, and secured their status. So what is the play, Terrence asks, lacing his fingers together on the desk. Because I know you did not come here just to read their credit card statements and accept defeat. I walk back to the desk and tap my manicured fingernail against the thick manila folder. I look Terrence dead in the eye. If their credit is entirely maxed out and they used my condo money to pay for the wedding vendors, what is protecting their primary asset? What is keeping the roof over their own heads? Terrence lets out a low whistle. He swivels his chair around to face his dual monitors and starts typing rapidly. The rhythmic clacking of his keyboard fills the silence in the office. You always know exactly where to look, Jada, he says, his eyes scanning the glowing screens. Let us pull up the deed and lean history for the Oak Ridge estate. The Oak Ridge estate is my parents' pride and joy. It is a sprawling 6-bedroom colonial with a perfectly manicured wraparound porch. It is the house where Patricia hosts her church auxiliary board meetings and where Warren invites the deacons for expensive scotch. That house is the physical manifestation of their entire identity. Losing it would not just be a financial hit. It would be a total social obliteration. Terrence clicks a few more times and a document pops up on his screen. A slow, predatory smile spreads across his face. He turns the monitor so I can see it. Look at this, he says, pointing to a line of dense legal text. 6 months ago, right after Brianna and Connor announced their engagement, your parents took out a secondary mortgage on the Oak Ridge property. I lean in closer, resting my hands on the edge of his desk. A secondary mortgage, I ask. Their primary mortgage has been paid down for 20 years. Why would they leverage it now? Terrence pulls up the corresponding financial statements he gathered. Because an engagement in Connor Circle is not just an announcement, it is a season. Do you remember the engagement party they threw in Atlanta? The one they flew 50 people out for? Then there was the local celebration at the country club. Patricia also needed to clear their country club arrears before Connor parents started asking questions about why their prospective in-laws were restricted from booking the main dining hall. They needed hundreds of thousands of dollars fast. I stare at the screen, the pieces falling into place perfectly. Traditional banks require extensive underwriting. With their credit cards maxed out and their debt-to-income ratio completely skewed, no reputable bank would approve a secondary mortgage of that size. They did not use a traditional bank. Terrence confirms, pulling up the lender details. They went to a hard money lender, a private equity group that specializes in high-risk, high-yield short-term loans. Look at the terms, Jada. It is completely predatory. They signed a promissory note with an astronomical interest rate and a strict repayment schedule. They leveraged the equity of their pristine suburban mansion for fast cash. I read through the clauses of the loan agreement. It is a financial death trap. They essentially handed over the keys to their kingdom for a temporary injection of cash. But how did they expect to pay this back, I ask? The monthly payments on a predatory loan like this would eclipse Warren's entire pension. They did not plan to pay it back, Terrence says, leaning back in his chair. Not right away, at least. I think they banked on the condo sale to cover this mess. They initiated the sale of your condo, hoping the massive payout would wipe out this secondary mortgage and fund the wedding. But they grossly miscalculated the wedding costs. Once Connor family demanded the 50-50 split for the $120,000 spectacle, your parents panicked. They took your condo money and dumped every single penny of it straight into the wedding vendors just to keep up appearances. I straighten up, feeling a profound sense of awe at their sheer stupidity. They fed my hard-earned real estate equity to florists and caterers instead of saving their own home. They prioritized a one-day party over their permanent shelter. Which leads us to the best part, Terrence says softly, his eyes gleaming with professional satisfaction. He clicks one final time, bringing up a freshly filed county court document. Because they dumped your condo funds into the wedding, they missed the balloon payment on the secondary mortgage. They missed last month, too. And the month before that? Jada, they are officially 90 days past due. I stare at the digital stamp on the document. Notice of default. The hard money lender filed it 3 days ago, Terrence explains. Warren and Patricia are in active default. The lender is preparing to initiate formal foreclosure proceedings by the end of the month. Your parents are standing on a trap door and the lever has already been pulled. They just do not know it yet because they are too busy tasting wedding cakes and picking out linen napkins. I walk back to the window looking out at the city below. The geometry of my revenge is aligning perfectly. They think the wedding is the finish line. They believe that if they can just get Brianna down the aisle and secure her legal tie to Connor's wealthy family, all their financial sins will be washed away. They are probably hoping to beg Connor's father for a discreet loan after the honeymoon to quietly settle the house debt. They are banking on the illusion of black excellence to save them from the reality of their gross financial negligence. But that hard money lender does not care about their church standing. The lender does not care about the country club or the Vera Wang gown. The lender only cares about the paper. How much is the outstanding debt, I ask, keeping my back to Terrence. $250,000. Terrence answers, checking the ledger. Plus late fees and penalties. It is a fraction of what the Oak Ridge estate is actually worth, but the private equity group holds the primary lien right now. They will auction it off to the highest bidder the second the legal window closes. I turn around and walk back to the desk. I place my hands flat against the wood, leaning over to look Terrence directly in the eye. I feel the power shifting, the final pieces of the board moving exactly where I need them to be. I have spent my career navigating commercial acquisitions. I know how debt works. I know how private equity operates. Debt can be bought, debt can be sold, debt can be weaponized. Find the name of the private equity group holding their mortgage, I say, my voice ringing with absolute authority. Find the managing partner. I want a meeting with them by tomorrow afternoon. We are not going to let this go to a public auction. Terrence picks up his pen, a slow, victorious smile spreading across his face. He knows exactly what I'm about to do. I am going to buy the paper, I tell him. I am going to buy the debt on the Oak Ridge estate through my holding company. They thought they could steal my apartment to fund a party, so I am going to buy their house. Let us see how elegant they look when I am the one holding the deed to their lives. Terrence moves with terrifying efficiency. Within 2 hours, he has the managing partner of Vanguard Capital on the phone. Vanguard is the boutique hard money lender that approved my parents' predatory secondary mortgage. They are a ruthless private equity firm known for quick payouts and zero tolerance for delinquent borrowers. They hate carrying non-performing residential assets on their quarterly books, and Terrence uses that exact leverage to secure a meeting. The next afternoon, I walk into Vanguard Capital's sleek chrome and glass office building downtown. I am wearing a tailored navy suit, my hair pulled back into a severe knot. Terrence walks in, lockstep beside me, carrying his leather briefcase. I do not look like a grieving daughter who just lost her home. I look like a corporate predator, ready to feed. We are escorted into a sprawling boardroom overlooking the city. The managing partner, a sharp-eyed financier named David, sits at the head of the table. He looks at me with mild curiosity. I do not introduce myself as Jada, the daughter of Warren and Patricia. I introduce myself as the managing director of Obsidian Holdings, a commercial real estate acquisition firm. I keep the corporate veil thick and impenetrable. To Vanguard Capital, the people defaulting on the Oak Ridge estate are just a bad investment dragging down their monthly metrics. To me, they are a chessboard waiting to be flipped. I sit across from David and lay out my proposal with absolute precision. I offer to purchase the distressed debt portfolio covering the Oak Ridge property. I will pay the full principal balance of $250,000 plus every single accrued late fee penalty and administrative charge in pure liquid cash. In exchange, Vanguard will immediately transfer the promissory note, the deed of trust, and the active right to foreclose directly to Obsidian Holdings. David leans back in his chair, studying the term sheet Terrence slides across the polished mahogany table. Hard money lenders despise the messy, protracted legal nightmare of foreclosing on suburban residential properties. The optics are bad and the legal fees eat into their margins. When an institutional buyer offers to sweep a toxic loan off their desk for full face value in cash, they do not ask moral questions. They just want the liability off their ledger. David picks up his pen. "We have a deal," he says, his voice crisp and strictly business. The next hour is a blur of dense legal paperwork. I read through every clause, every stipulation, and every transfer agreement. Terrence double-checks the assignment of the deed, ensuring the chain of title is perfectly airtight. Everything is flawless. Warren and Patricia signed away their rights the moment they missed that second balloon payment. They dug their own grave when they chose to fund Brianna imported caviar instead of paying their mortgage. I pick up my pen and sign my name on the final transfer documents. The ink flows smoothly over the thick paper. With a few deliberate strokes, I finalize a transaction that essentially hands me the keys to the kingdom my parents worship. Terrence pulls out his laptop and initiates the wire transfer from my corporate accounts. The screen flashes confirming the funds have cleared. It is a massive sum of money, but it is a fraction of the equity they stole from my condo. David stands up and hands me the original heavy stock promissory note. "It is official," he says, shaking my hand. "Obsidian Holdings now owns the debt. You have full legal authority to execute the foreclosure at your discretion." We walk out of the building and step into the cool afternoon air. Riding down the elevator, Terrence looks at me with a mix of professional awe and mild terror. "You own them, Jada," he says quietly. I nod, staring straight ahead at the reflection in the elevator doors. It is a profound, chilling realization. Warren and Patricia stole the condo I worked a grueling decade to build, assuming I was too weak to strike back. They stripped me of my sanctuary to finance a country club facade. Now, by simply signing a piece of paper, I have legally acquired the roof over their heads. The sprawling 6-bedroom colonial where they host their pretentious church friends. The manicured lawn where they take their curated family photos. The very foundation of their fabricated black excellence. All of it belongs to me. I return to my penthouse at the Glass House Residences. The suite is completely silent. The late afternoon sun casts long golden shadows across the marble floors. I take off my blazer and walk into the master bedroom. I step into the walk-in closet and open the heavy steel wall safe hidden behind a sliding mirror. I look at the thick cream-colored folder in my hands. It holds the transferred mortgage note, the assignment of the deed of trust, and the active notice of default. It holds the absolute destruction of my parents' carefully constructed universe. I slide the folder into the steel compartment. I close the heavy door and spin the dial. The lock clicks into place with a satisfying metallic thud. I have the weapons secured. Right now, Warren and Patricia are likely running around the city picking up their custom floral arrangements and finalizing their expensive outfits for the rehearsal dinner. They are floating on a cloud of stolen money, completely oblivious to the fact that they are already homeless. They think they outsmarted me. They think they won. I pour myself a glass of Cabernet and look at the calendar alert popping up on my phone screen. The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow night. It is time to put on my best dress, walk into that country club, and play the part of the compliant invisible sister one last time. I pull up to the grand entrance of the Oak Ridge Country Club the following evening. The valet takes the keys to my car with a crisp, professional nod. The air is thick with the scent of pine and expensive cologne. This is the exact club where my parents are desperately dodging their membership dues. I walk through the heavy oak doors, wearing an emerald green silk dress that commands attention without screaming for it. It is the uniform of a woman who has nothing to prove and absolutely nothing to lose. The private dining hall is a masterclass in excessive spending. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in heavy ivory linen. Massive arrangements of imported white orchids dominate the room. I recognize the floral designer's signature style. My parents took the equity from my stolen condo and literally turned it into table decorations. I spot them immediately. Warren and Patricia are standing near the private bar holding court with Brianna and Connor. My parents are both dressed in brand new designer clothing. Patricia is wearing a diamond tennis bracelet that I am absolutely certain she put on a credit card last week. They are projecting an aura of generational wealth, laughing loudly and sipping top-tier champagne. But to my trained eye, they look like hostages. I can see the subtle sheen of sweat on my father's forehead. I can see the rigid tension in my mother's shoulders. They are terrified. I glide across the room, painting a pleasant, compliant smile on my face. Patricia sees me approaching, and her smile falters for a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. She excuses herself from the group and meets me halfway, intersecting my path before I can reach Connor family. Her manicured fingers grip my forearm tight enough to leave crescent-shaped indentations in my skin. "I am glad you decided to be mature about this, Jada," she hisses, her voice dropping an octave so the country club staff cannot hear. "Do not do anything to embarrass your sister tonight. Charles and Victoria are very traditional people. They expect a certain standard. Play nicely, or I will have security escort you out." I look down at her gripping hand and then back up to her panicked eyes. "I am just here to celebrate Mother," I say, my tone smooth as glass. "You have nothing to worry about from me." She searches my face, looking for the anger she expects. Finding only a placid smile, she releases my arm and smooths her dress. "See that you keep it that way," she mutters, turning back toward the group. I follow her to the circle. Connor smiles brightly when he sees me. He is a tall, golden retriever of a man oblivious to the financial bloodbath happening right beneath his nose. "Jada," he says, pulling me into a quick hug. "I am so glad you made it. Brianna told me you were swamped with some real estate project." I look at Brianna, who is glaring at me over the rim of her glass. "Yes," I say smoothly, keeping my eyes locked on my sister. "I recently acquired a rather large residential property. It took a lot of legal maneuvering, but the closing was extremely satisfying." Brianna jaw clenches, but she forces a giggle. "Well, we are just thrilled you could take a night off from your little workaholic life to join the real world," she says. Connor parents turn their attention to me. Charles is a formidable man with silver hair and the posture of someone who has never been told no. Victoria is draped in cashmere and pearls, exuding the kind of casual superiority that takes generations to perfect. "Ah," the elusive older sister, Charles says, extending a hand. "Warren was just telling us how you dabble in property management. It is so wonderful to see young women keeping themselves busy." I shake his hand, my grip firm. "I do a bit more than dabble, Charles, but yes, keeping busy is important." Victoria takes a delicate sip of her champagne and turns her gaze back to Patricia. "We were just discussing the catering for tomorrow," Victoria says, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I must admit, Patricia, I was pleasantly surprised when you agreed to match our contribution for the reception. In our circle, the bride family traditionally covers the entire event, but we wanted to be generous. It is so refreshing to see that your family values these cultural traditions just as much as we do." The microaggression hangs in the air, heavy and deliberate. Victoria is not complimenting my mother. She is reminding Patricia that they are doing us a favor by splitting the bill. She is subtly questioning whether a black family from the suburbs can truly afford to play in their league. Patricia laughs, a high-pitched, nervous sound that grates against my ears. "Oh, absolutely, Victoria. Warren and I believe in sparing no expense for our girls. Black excellence is about maintaining a standard. We would not dream of offering Connor anything less than the very best." Victoria smiles, reaching out to touch one of Brianna's meticulously styled curls. "Well, she certainly is a beautiful girl. So articulate, too. Charles and I were just remarking to our country club friends how well-spoken Brianna is. She fits right in. You people must be very proud of how she has adapted." "You people." The phrase lands like a lead weight. I watch my parents swallow the insult. Warren shifts uncomfortably in his expensive loafers. Patricia's smile becomes dangerously brittle. But they say nothing. They nod and agree, absorbing the blatant condescension because they are too financially destitute to defend their own dignity. They have mortgaged their souls and stolen my home just to buy a seat at a table where they will never truly be respected. Charles turns to my father, swirling the bourbon in his glass. Tell me, Warren, how is your investment portfolio handling this current market volatility? I moved a significant portion of our assets into municipal bonds last quarter. Connor mentioned you have extensive real estate holdings. My father clears his throat, pulling at the collar of his shirt. A bead of sweat trickles down his temple. Yes. Well, you know how it is, Charles. Diversification is key. We have several properties generating passive income. The market fluctuates, but our foundation is rock solid. I take a slow, deliberate sip of my wine, hiding the absolute predatory delight in my eyes. Rock solid. My father is standing in a room paid for with stolen money, boasting about a real estate portfolio to a man who could buy and sell him 10 times over. He is bragging about his foundational wealth while the actual deed to his only remaining asset is locked inside a steel safe in my bedroom. He is completely bankrupt, and he is performing a masterclass in delusion just to impress a man who just called his family articulate, as if it were a shock. I watch Brianna cling to Connor's arm, desperate to validate her worth through his proximity. I watch Patricia laugh at a terrible joke Victoria makes, completely subjugating her own pride to secure this wedding. They traded my sanctuary for this exact moment of humiliating subservience. A waiter chimes a small crystal bell, signaling that it is time for the guests to take their seats for the formal rehearsal dinner. The crowd begins to shuffle toward the grand dining tables. Patricia shoots me another warning glare, signaling me to stay out of the way. I smile back at her, raising my glass in a silent mock salute. I am not going to ruin their dinner. I want them to eat every single bite. I want them to gorge themselves on this illusion of grandeur. The higher they climb tonight, the more devastating the impact will be when I finally pull the floor out from under them tomorrow. The guests begin to migrate from the cocktail lounge into the grand dining room, taking their assigned places. I walk toward the intricate display of silver-framed escort cards, arranged on a velvet-draped table near the entrance. My eyes scan the elegant calligraphy, searching for my name among the premium tables near the front. Table 1 is reserved for Connor and his immediate family. Table 2 belongs to my parents and Brianna. Table 3 is designated for the extended bridal party. My name is nowhere to be found in the first tier. Before I can scan the middle section, I feel a sharp tug on my elbow. Warren and Patricia materialize beside me, effectively boxing me in. My father grips my arm with a forced, jovial smile plastered on his face, nodding to passing guests, while physically steering me away from the center of the room. Patricia flanks my other side, her perfume heavy and suffocating. We step into the dim corridor just outside the main dining hall, away from the prying eyes of Connor's wealthy relatives. Patricia drops the smile instantly. Her face tightens into a mask of pure irritation. Jada. We made a slight adjustment to the seating chart this morning. Patricia whispers, her tone urgent and hushed. You are seated at table 12. I look at her, processing the layout of the room I just saw. Table 12 is the absolute last table in the hall. It is pushed against the far wall, tucked behind a massive structural pillar, and positioned directly next to the swinging wooden doors of the catering kitchen. You put me at the vendor table, I state, my voice perfectly flat. Warren steps closer, adjusting his silk tie. Let us not make this bigger than it is, Jada, he says. Connor family is very traditional, very conservative. Charles and Victoria have certain expectations about family structure and presentation. Having a 35-year-old unmarried daughter sitting at the head table raises uncomfortable questions. We do not want to draw attention to your single status tonight. It ruins the aesthetic. The aesthetic. I stare at the man who is currently defaulting on a predatory mortgage to pay for this exact aesthetic. Patricia chimes in, her hands fluttering nervously. Victoria already made a passive-aggressive comment about modern women prioritizing careers over family. Your intimidating career woman vibe is simply not the energy we need at the front of the room tonight. You make the men at their table uncomfortable because you do not know how to soften yourself. Brianna is the focus. She presents the perfect image of soft, elegant black womanhood that Charles and Victoria expect to see. We need everything to look flawless, you understand? They are hiding me. They stole my apartment, liquidated my entire net worth to fund this extravagant charade, and now they are physically hiding me in the back of the room because my existence as a self-made, independent woman threatens their fragile, subservient performance. They are ashamed of the only person in this family who actually has a positive net worth. I look at Warren and then at Patricia. A lesser woman would have thrown a drink in their faces. A lesser woman would have screamed, caused a scene, and given them the exact dramatic narrative they expected. But I am not a lesser woman. I am the apex predator in this room, and predators do not mind waiting in the dark. I understand perfectly. I say, my voice smooth and utterly devoid of emotion. Table 12, please do not let me keep you from your traditional in-laws. Patricia lets out a visible breath of relief. She smooths the front of her designer gown. Thank you, Jada. I knew you would be mature about this. Just eat your dinner quietly and try not to draw attention to yourself. I turn on my heel and walk into the dining room, navigating the sea of imported floral arrangements and crystal glassware. I bypass the glittering front tables and make my way to the shadowy corner in the back. Table 12 is exactly as cramped and marginalized as I expected. Every time the heavy kitchen doors swing open, a blast of hot air and the clatter of industrial dishwashing bleeds into the space. My dining companions are already seated. There is a 22-year-old photography assistant furiously checking his camera lenses, a junior floral coordinator with tired eyes, and the audio technician for tomorrow night live band. I take my seat, smoothing my emerald silk dress over my knees. The audio technician, a young guy in a black polo shirt, looks at me with mild confusion. "You look a little overdressed for the crew table," he says, offering a friendly but tired smile. "Are you with the venue management?" I pick up my water goblet and take a slow sip. "No," I reply, my voice perfectly calm. "I am the primary investor for this weekend events. I just prefer a quiet seat." He laughs, assuming it is a dry joke. I smile back and do not correct him. The first course arrives. Because we are at the back of the room, table 12 is served last. The catering staff places a plate of dry, aged prime rib and butter, poached lobster tail in front of me. I pick up my silver fork and knife and take a deliberate bite. The meat is tender, melting on my tongue. It tastes exactly like the stolen equity from my downtown condo. I eat my expensive dinner in the shadows, watching the tragic comedy unfold at the front of the room. From this vantage point, I see everything. The dimmed lighting at the back gives me the perfect cover to observe the people who just banished me. At table 1, Charles and Victoria are picking at their lobster, looking profoundly bored. They exude the casual indifference of people who are accustomed to luxury and completely unimpressed by my parents' desperate attempt to match it. Victoria whispers something to Charles behind her napkin, and he gives a tight, condescending smile. At table 2, Warren is sweating. He is leaning across the table, forcing boisterous, unnatural laughter at whatever dry comment Charles just made. Patricia is nodding so vigorously her neck looks strained. She is performing the role of the affluent, sophisticated matriarch, but her eyes keep darting to the waitstaff, tracking the expensive bottles of wine being poured, terrified of the final bar tab. Brianna is playing the demure, blushing bride, resting her chin on Connor's shoulder and batting her eyelashes. It is a stunning theatrical performance, a far cry from the vicious, manipulative girl who texted me that smug selfie just a few days ago. They banished me to the back of the room to hide their shame, but putting a predator in the shadows just gives them a clearer view of the prey. I watch them gorge themselves on my stolen assets. Every bite of prime rib, every sip of imported vintage champagne, every note played by the classical string quartet is another nail driven deep into their financial coffin. They are actively consuming the last shreds of their own salvation. They think they are securing a legacy. They have no idea they are merely enjoying their last meal before the execution. The dinner service slowly winds down. The clinking of silverware fades, giving way to the low hum of relaxed conversation and the soft scraping of chairs as guests begin to mingle. The string quartet shifts to a more upbeat tempo. I remain seated at table 12, finishing the last of my wine. I watch Brianna excuse herself from Connor, side smoothing her custom dress as she stands. She leans in to whisper something to her bridesmaids before turning and walking purposefully out of the main dining hall toward the luxury restroom suites down the corridor. I set my empty wine glass down on the crisp white tablecloth. The timing is perfect. I stand up, smoothing my emerald silk, and step away from the shadows of table 12. It is time to see exactly how desperate the golden child has become. The heavy oak door of the women lounge closes behind me, muting the classical string quartet playing in the main dining hall. The restroom is a sanctuary of excessive country club wealth. Rose quartz countertops gleam under crystal vanity lights, and the air smells strongly of expensive jasmine diffusers. Brianna is standing at the furthest sink, leaning close to the gilded mirror. She is aggressively reapplying her custom shade of blush lipstick. The demure blushing bride act she performed so flawlessly at table 2 has completely evaporated. Her posture is rigid, her jaw is tight. She looks up, catching my reflection in the mirror, and she does not even try to hide her absolute contempt. "I am surprised you actually had the nerve to show up," she says. Her voice is sharp, echoing harshly off the marble tiles. "Mom and Dad were convinced you would be too humiliated to show your face after you realized the condo was gone. They thought you would be crying in some cheap motel by now." I keep my expression completely neutral. I take slow, deliberate steps toward the adjacent sink, placing my emerald silk clutch on the cool quartz counter. "You mean after I found out our parents committed real estate fraud to fund your party?" "No, I am not humiliated, Brianna. I am just here to observe the return on my investment." Brianna scoffs, rolling her eyes dramatically. She drops her lipstick back into her designer handbag. "Oh, please do not play the victim, Jada. You have been hoarding money for years while the rest of us actually do the heavy lifting to maintain the family reputation. You owed us that equity. Connor family expects a certain caliber of elegance. They expect generational wealth. Your selfish hoarding was holding this family back. You should be thanking me for putting that dead asset to good use. My wedding is going to put us on the map." They built Brianna to be a parasite disguised as a princess. Warren and Patricia taught her that taking from me was her birthright. They convinced her that my hard work was merely a resource meant to be harvested for her benefit. I stare at her. The sheer delusion is staggering, but I do not interrupt her. I let her dig the hole deeper. "But there is a problem," Brianna continues. Her tone shifts abruptly from arrogant superiority to harsh, demanding desperation. "The wedding planner miscalculated the exchange rate and the import taxes for the floral arrangements. The white orchids and the cascading peonies for the reception hall are sitting in customs. The floral designer is threatening to pull the centerpieces for the entire reception tomorrow, unless the final balance is cleared by midnight tonight. Mom and Dad are tapped out. The condo money barely covered the venue and the catering deposits." I look at her, tilting my head slightly. "You blew through over $300,000 of stolen equity in 3 weeks, and you are still coming up short on flowers." Brianna steps closer, invading my personal space. The cloying scent of her heavy perfume washes over me. "The outstanding balance is $15,000, she states flatly. "And you are going to write me a check right now. I know you have it, Jada. I know you hide cash in those little corporate accounts of yours. You do not have a husband or kids. You have no real expenses. You are going to pay the florist." I stare at her, absorbing the absolute audacity of the demand. And if I refuse, I ask, my voice dangerously soft, "If I do not happen to have $15,000 to drop on imported peonies, then wire it," she snaps, pulling her phone out of her bag and shoving it toward me. "Log into your banking app and wire the money, because if you do not, I will walk right back out into that dining room and tell Victoria that you showed up here uninvited and unstable. I will tell Connor parents that you have a history of mental breakdowns and that you are trying to extort us for money. I will have the club security drag you out of here in front of everyone. You will be publicly humiliated. You will be banned from the ceremony tomorrow. You will be permanently erased from this family. We will tell everyone at church that you lost your mind. Write the check, Jada, or you are dead to us." She stands there, her chest heaving, believing she has just delivered a masterful checkmate. She expects me to panic. She expects me to crumble under the threat of social exile and family abandonment. She thinks the fear of being uninvited to her spectacular wedding will bring me to my knees. She truly believes that being cut off from the toxic facade of this family is a punishment rather than a prize. She has no idea that the very ground she is standing on is crumbling beneath her designer heels. She has no idea that the money she stole from me was the last financial lifeline keeping her parents out of bankruptcy. I do not yell. I do not defend myself. I turn away from her completely. I reach out and push the gold handle of the faucet. The warm water cascades over my hands. I take a pump of the expensive artisanal soap and lather my palms, moving with deliberate, agonizing slowness. The sound of the running water fills the heavy silence in the restroom. I interlock my fingers, scrubbing the soap into a thick white foam. I am washing my hands of her. I am washing my hands of this entire bloodline. Brianna watches me, her breathing turning erratic as panic starts to bleed through her anger. "Are you listening to me?" she demands, stepping closer until she is almost yelling over the sound of the water. "I will ruin you, Jada. I will ruin your reputation in this city." I rinse the soap away. I shut off the water. The silence slams back into the room. I reach for a thick linen hand towel from the silver tray on the counter. I dry my hands, meticulously pressing the soft fabric against my skin, making sure every single drop of water is gone. Only when my hands are completely dry do I drop the towel into the wicker basket. I turn to face my sister. I look her dead in the eye, stripping away every ounce of sibling obligation I ever held. No. The word drops between us like an anvil. It is a complete sentence. It requires no explanation, no justification, no negotiation. Brianna's face goes slack. The arrogant mask shatters, leaving behind a terrified, desperate little girl who suddenly realizes her leverage does not exist. "What did you just say?" she whispers, her voice shaking. I pick up my emerald clutch and smooth the front of my silk dress. "I said no, Brianna. I am not giving you $15,000. I am not giving you 15 cents. You can walk out there and tell Victoria whatever you want. You can call security and have them escort me to my car. You can ban me from your wedding tomorrow. But you will not see another dime of my money." I turn and walk toward the heavy oak door. "Enjoy the orchids," I say over my shoulder without looking back. I push the door open and walk back out into the dimly lit corridor, leaving my sister standing paralyzed by the sinks, drowning in a floral debt she cannot pay. The heavy oak door swings shut behind me, cutting off the harsh fluorescent glare of the restroom. I take a slow, deep breath of the dimly lit corridor air. The faint sounds of the string quartet drift down the hallway, playing a soft classical melody that feels absurdly out of place against the financial carnage happening behind the scenes. I adjust the strap of my emerald clutch, preparing to walk back to table 12 and finish my wine. But I do not make it 3 steps. A shadow detaches itself from the alcove near the coat check. Patricia steps directly into my path, blocking the corridor. She must have been waiting out here, pacing the patterned carpet, while she sent Brianna in to do the initial shakedown. Her designer gown rustles as she moves, and the heavy scent of her jasmine perfume hits me like a physical wall. "Jada," she hisses, her voice dropping into that frantic, hushed tone she reserves for public spaces where she needs to maintain control. "What on earth did you just say to your sister?" I stop, looking down at the woman who gave birth to me. "Brianna texted you already?" I ask, my voice devoid of any inflection. She must type incredibly fast when she is panicking about imported peonies. Patricia does not miss a beat. The transformation is instantaneous and masterful. I have watched her execute this exact emotional maneuver for 35 years. Her shoulders slump. Her lower lip begins to tremble. The harsh, furious matriarch vanishes, replaced by a deeply wounded, grieving mother. She reaches up and dabs at the corners of her eyes, being careful not to smudge her expensive mascara. Real tears brim in her eyes, welling up with Academy Award-winning precision. "How could you do this to us, Jada?" she whispers, her voice cracking perfectly. How could you be so cruel to your own flesh and blood on the eve of the most important day of our lives? We are hanging by a thread here. We are doing everything in our power to secure a future for this family, to build a legacy of Black excellence that you can be proud of. And you are actively trying to tear us apart. I stare at her, watching the fake tears spill over her eyelashes. She is weaponizing her own distress, trying to make me feel like a monster for refusing to be extorted. She expects me to crumble, to apologize, to reach into my purse and hand over my checkbook just to stop her from crying. You sold my home, I state flatly, refusing to be pulled into her emotional vortex. You stole my equity to buy ice sculptures, and now you want me to pay for the flowers too. Patricia shakes her head violently, sending a single tear rolling down her cheek. We did not steal anything. We utilized a family asset to elevate all of us. But you cannot see that because you are blinded by your own bitter jealousy. She steps closer, jabbing a manicured finger toward my chest. That is what this is really about, is it not? You are jealous. You are 35 years old, entirely alone and consumed by bitterness because your younger sister found a wealthy, successful man who adores her. You cannot stand the fact that Brianna is getting the fairy tale while you spend your nights reviewing commercial leases in an empty apartment. You want to ruin her wedding because you know you will never have one of your own. The gaslighting is so textbook it is almost boring. She is taking my legitimate outrage over a massive financial crime and twisting it into a narrative about a sad, lonely spinster acting out of spite. She is trying to convince me that my anger is invalid, that my boundaries are actually just symptoms of my own personal failure. You are trying to destroy this family out of pure spite. Patricia continues, her voice hitching with manufactured grief. You are willing to humiliate us in front of Charles and Victoria just to feed your own ego. I raised you better than this, Jada. I raised you to support your sister. I look at the fake tears glistening on her cheeks. I look at the diamond tennis bracelet catching the dim light of the corridor. I think about the hard money lender preparing to auction off her suburban mansion. I think about the heavy steel safe in my penthouse, holding the deed to her entire existence. If I argue with her now, she will escalate. If I tell her she is going to be homeless by the end of the month, she will scream and cause a scene that will draw Connor family out into the hallway. I do not want to give her the satisfaction of a screaming match. I do not want to blow my cover before the main event. Tomorrow is the wedding. Tomorrow is the grand stage. I need her feeling completely secure, utterly invincible, and entirely unaware of the guillotine swinging down toward her neck. I need to feed her the delusion she so desperately craves. I let out a slow, controlled breath, deliberately softening the rigid line of my shoulders. I lower my gaze, looking at the patterned carpet for a fraction of a second before meeting her eyes again. I force my expression to relax, mimicking the defeated posture she expects to see. Patricia sees the shift. She stops crying immediately. The tears vanish like turning off a faucet. The vulnerable, grieving mother is gone, replaced instantly by the triumphant matriarch who senses blood in the water. She steps closer, her voice dropping the theatrical wobble. You are going to walk back into that restroom, she orders, her tone hard and absolute. You are going to apologize to Brianna for upsetting her. And then you are going to write that check for $15,000 to clear the floral balance. You will do it tonight before the midnight deadline. You will fix this mess you created, and tomorrow you will sit quietly at your assigned table and be grateful we even allowed you to attend. I look into her cold, calculating eyes. I let a long, heavy beat of silence stretch between us. I allow her to bask in the absolute certainty of her own dominance. I am not going to write a check tonight in a country club bathroom. I say, my voice quiet, subdued, carrying just enough hesitation to sound compliant. It is late, and the banking transfer limit on my personal account will not clear a $15,000 wire until regular business hours tomorrow anyway. Patricia's jaw tightens, but she processes the logistical truth of my statement. So, what are you saying? She demands. I look right at her, delivering the most devastatingly honest lie of my life. I am saying you do not need to worry, Mother. I will handle exactly what needs to be handled tomorrow. I will make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve at the reception. Patricia exhales a sharp breath of victory. Her shoulders drop as tension leaves her body. She believes I have surrendered. She interprets my words as a promise to pay the florist and stay in my place. She hears exactly what her arrogance dictates she should hear. "See," she says, smoothing the front of my emerald dress with a condescending pat. "Was that so hard? I knew you would do the right thing, Jada. I knew you would finally put family first. Go back to your table and finish your dinner. I will tell Brianna to expect the payment tomorrow afternoon." She turns on her designer heel and sweeps back down the corridor toward the main dining hall, practically floating on air. She thinks she has won. She thinks she has successfully bullied the scapegoat into funding the final piece of her fraudulent masterpiece. I stand alone in the dim hallway, watching her disappear through the double doors. A slow, cold smile spreads across my face. I promised her I would handle exactly what needed to be handled tomorrow. And I am a woman of my word. Tomorrow, I am going to handle the foreclosure. Let them enjoy their prime rib and their stolen aesthetic tonight. Tomorrow the bill comes due. Saturday evening arrives with a suffocating summer humidity. But inside the grand atrium of the city, most exclusive historical hotel, the climate is perfectly controlled. I walk through the heavy gilded double doors, and the sheer magnitude of the spectacle hits me like a physical wall of excess. My parents did not just throw a wedding, they funded a coronation. I hand my wrap to the attendant and step into the main foyer. Right in the center of the room, dominating the space, is a massive raw bar carved entirely out of solid ice. It is shaped like two interlocking swans, their wings spread wide to hold hundreds of freshly shucked oysters and jumbo shrimp. The water dripping slowly from the swans, crystal-clear beaks catches the light of the overhead chandeliers. I stop and stare at the meticulously carved feathers. A custom ice sculpture of this magnitude easily costs upward of $4,000. That is not frozen water melting onto a silver platter. That is 3 months of my property taxes. That is the special assessment fee I paid out of pocket to replace the roof on my condo building last spring. I move past the foyer and enter the main ballroom. The scale of the extravagance is actually sickening. The ceiling is draped in sheer white chiffon, making the massive room feel like the inside of a luxury tent. And the flowers, the imported peonies and rare white orchids spill from towering golden vases on every single one of the 40 guest tables. There are cascading floral runners lining the grand staircase and thick walls of white roses framing the sweetheart table. The air is so thick with their sweet cloying fragrance that it is almost hard to breathe. Brianna got her floral upgrade. She must have looked at her bank account this morning, seen that no wire transfer had arrived from me, and simply assumed I paid the vendor directly in cash, just as I promised Patricia I would handle things. I walk past a table and brush my fingers against a velvet, soft orchid petal. I do not see exotic flora shipped overnight from overseas. I see the custom granite countertops I installed in my kitchen 5 years ago. I see the rainfall showerhead I bought as a gift to myself after closing my first major commercial deal. Every petal in this room was bought with my blood and sweat. A live 10-piece band occupies a massive elevated stage at the front of the ballroom. They are wearing custom-tailored white tuxedos, a full brass section, 2 grand pianos, and a lead singer crooning a smooth, flawless rendition of a classic rhythm and blues hit. The acoustics are perfect. The energy in the room is electric. The cost to book a premier ensemble like this for a Saturday night in prime wedding season is easily $20,000. $20,000. I stand there listening to the music and calculating the math. That is the exact amount of the initial down payment I scraped together working double shifts in my 20s, while Warren and Patricia were busy paying for Brianna elite sorority dues and pageant coaches. Waiters in crisp white jackets and black bow ties glide through the crowd carrying silver trays. One stops in front of me, offering a delicate crystal spoon resting on a perfectly toasted blini. Imported beluga caviar. I take one and place it on my tongue. It tastes salty, rich, and decadent. It tastes like the original hardwood floors I spent 3 weeks restoring by hand because I could not afford to hire a contractor back then. I watch hundreds of guests laughing and swallowing these expensive little bites. Every single bite taken in this room, every sip of vintage champagne poured from the towering crystal pyramids is directly funded by the theft of my sanctuary. I spot Warren and Patricia holding court near the head table. Patricia is wearing a custom silver gown that sweeps the floor, her neck glittering with diamonds that are undoubtedly rented or bought on yet another maxed-out credit card. Warren is holding a snifter of top-shelf bourbon, laughing loudly with a group of older men from his megachurch. They are performing their roles flawlessly. They are the affluent, sophisticated patriarch and matriarch of a thriving, wealthy family. They look completely invincible. They are soaking in the validation of their peers, basking in the glow of the black excellence they so desperately crave. They traded their morals, their daughter, and their own financial survival for this exact moment of social worship. Across the room, Connor parents Charles and Victoria are mingling with their own circle of wealthy friends. Victoria looks around the ballroom with a slight nod of approval. She is satisfied. In her eyes, Patricia and Warren have successfully met the financial standard required to merge their bloodlines. The 50-50 split has been honored. The extravagant aesthetic has been maintained. The illusion is absolute, and Charles and Victoria are none the wiser that they are currently partying on stolen funds and fraudulent mortgages. I make my way to my assigned seat. Table 9. It is a slight upgrade from the vendor table at the rehearsal dinner. Patricia likely wanted to ensure I was visible enough to confirm I had complied with her demands, but far enough away from the head table to avoid ruining the professional photographs. I sit down at the empty table and place my designer clutch on my lap. I run my thumb over the smooth leather of my bag. Inside the clutch is a sleek black envelope. It does not hold a $15,000 check for the florist. It holds the official, legally binding notice of foreclosure for the Oak Ridge estate. The documents were finalized, signed, and stamped by the county clerk first thing this morning. The reception is a $120,000 masterpiece of fraud. I sit in my chair and watch the band play. I watch the guests laugh and clink their glasses. I watch my sister twirl onto the dance floor in her custom Vera Wang gown, the heavy lace spinning under the crystal chandeliers. They are literally dancing on the ashes of my home. They are celebrating the greatest financial heist of their lives, completely convinced that they have gotten away with it. They do not realize the music is about to stop. The clinking of silverware against fine china slowly fades as the catering staff moves silently through the ballroom, clearing the final dinner plates. The 10-piece band transitions from lively jazz to a soft instrumental melody, signaling the formal portion of the evening. The overhead chandeliers dim slightly, casting a warm golden spotlight on the center of the dance floor. It is time for the toasts. The best man gives a predictable speech about Connor and his college days. The maid of honor follows with a tearful tribute to Brianna and her flawless sense of style. The crowd laughs at the right moments and applauds politely. But everyone in the room knows these are just the opening acts. The main event is the father of the bride. Warren stands up from table 2. He buttons the center button of his custom-tailored tuxedo jacket and shoots his cuffs with the practiced elegance of a man who believes he owns the world. He accepts a silver microphone from the event coordinator and walks to the center of the dance floor. The spotlight tracks his movement. He commands the room effortlessly, exuding the artificial confidence he has honed over decades of country club dinners and church board meetings. Patricia sits up straighter at the head table, angling her face to ensure the hired photographers capture her best side. Brianna beams, looking at our father with total adoration. "Thank you all for being here tonight." Warren begins, his deep baritone voice echoing perfectly through the state-of-the-art sound system. He pauses, looking around the magnificent ballroom, letting the sheer scale of the $120,000 spectacle wash over the silent crowd. When Patricia and I looked at our beautiful daughter this morning, we were overwhelmed with a profound sense of gratitude. We realized that today is not just a celebration of love between Brianna and Connor. Today is the culmination of a lifelong vision. I sit at table 9, resting my hands in my lap. My posture is perfectly rigid. I do not blink. I watch him weave the first threads of his masterful delusion. As a black man in this country, Warren continues pacing slowly across the polished wood floor. You are taught early on that building a foundation is the hardest thing you will ever do. But Patricia and I made a vow decades ago. We promised each other that our family would never know lack. We promised that we would build a fortress of generational Black wealth that would stand the test of time. We wanted to ensure that our children could step out into the world not just surviving, but thriving at the highest possible level of excellence. A murmur of appreciative agreement ripples through the crowd. Several older men from our church nod their heads in solemn respect. I take a slow sip of my ice water. Generational Black wealth. The hypocrisy is so thick it practically coats the back of my throat. He is standing under a chiffon-draped ceiling preaching about building a fortress of wealth while actively defaulting on a predatory hard money loan with a 30% interest rate. He is lecturing hundreds of people about financial legacy while the deed to his own heavily mortgaged home sits locked inside the steel safe in my penthouse. He does not have generational wealth. He has generational debt, and he funded this exact microphone time by stealing the only real equity his bloodline possessed. Look around this room, Warren says, gesturing expansively with his free hand toward the towering floral arrangements and the massive ice sculptures. The beauty you see tonight is a testament to what happens when you refuse to compromise on your standards, when you demand excellence in every aspect of your life. Patricia and I spared absolutely no expense for this wedding because Brianna deserves the world. A father duty is to provide a launch pad for his children, and tonight we are launching Brianna into a brilliant new chapter. My fingernails press into the smooth leather of my clutch. He spared no expense because the expense was not his to spare. He gutted my decade of grueling labor. He stripped the hardwood floors, the custom countertops, and the late nights I spent reviewing commercial leases, and he transformed them into imported caviar and custom lace. He is standing in front of 200 people taking absolute credit for the financial sacrifice he forced upon me against my will. Warren turns his attention to table 1, where Charles and Victoria are seated. He offers them a deep, respectful bow of his head. To Connor, parents Charles and Victoria, we want to officially welcome you to our family. We know that merging two great families requires mutual respect and a shared understanding of legacy. When we sat down to plan this celebration, Patricia and I knew we had to match the incredible standard your family represents. We wanted to show you exactly who we are. We are a family that honors our commitments. We are a family that builds. Victoria smiles graciously, raising her crystal champagne flute in his direction. Charles nods, tapping the table in approval. They are buying every single word. They look at Warren and see a self-made tycoon, a wealthy patriarch who effortlessly dropped $60,000 in liquid cash to split a luxury wedding bill. They believe they are merging their old money bloodline with a formidable equal. They have absolutely no idea that the man holding the microphone is currently facing active foreclosure and maxed-out credit cards. Brianna, my beautiful girl, Warren says, turning back to his daughter, his voice dropping into a register of manufactured emotion. You are the absolute pinnacle of this family achievements. You carry our name with such grace, such elegance. You are everything we worked for. When I walk you down that aisle, I was not just giving you away. I was presenting my greatest masterpiece to the world. Patricia raises a delicate lace handkerchief to the corner of her eye, dabbing away a perfectly timed tear. Brianna blows a kiss to our father, the diamond on her finger catching the spotlight. The crowd lets out a collective sigh of adoration. It is a flawless performance. They are the ultimate picture of affluent, successful Black excellence. I look at the three of them wrapped in their delusion of grandeur. They are so intoxicated by the applause, by the validation of the wealthy white-in-laws, by the sheer scale of the lie they have successfully pulled off. They are completely oblivious to the fact that I am sitting 20 feet away, holding the detonator to their entire lives. Warren raises his champagne glass high into the air. So please, everyone raise a glass to Brianna and Connor. May your lives be as rich, as beautiful, and as completely secure as the foundation your families have built for you. Cheers. To Brianna and Connor, the crowd echoes in unison. 200 crystal glasses clink together, ringing out in the grand ballroom. The sound is deafening. The applause that follows is thunderous. Warren takes a deep bow, drinking his champagne as he steps back from the center of the floor. The event coordinator steps up to take the microphone from him, but Warren holds on to it for a brief second. He looks out over this crowd, his chest puffed out with absolute triumph. Before we get the band back up here, Warren says casually, holding the mic near his chin, does anyone else have a few words they would like to share? Any final blessings for the bride and groom before we open up the dance floor? The room is buzzing with happy chatter. The coordinator smiles and reaches for the microphone, assuming the formal toasts are concluded. I stand up from table 9. I do not rush. I push my chair back, letting the wooden legs scrape slightly against the polished floor. I pick up my black designer clutch, tucking it securely under my arm. I smooth the front of my emerald silk dress, ensuring every line falls perfectly into place. I step away from my table and walk deliberately toward the center of the ballroom. I am not the invisible daughter anymore. I am the owner of the venue. I am the holder of the deed. I am the architect of their impending destruction. I walk directly toward my father, my eyes locked on the silver microphone in his hand. He sees me approaching and his practiced smile falters for a fraction of a second. He glances quickly toward Patricia at the head table. I can see the exact moment panic registers in her eyes, but they are trapped. There are 200 pairs of eyes watching us. Warren cannot physically pull the microphone away from his own daughter without causing the exact type of unseemly public scene he has spent his entire life trying to avoid. I step into the center of the warm, golden spotlight. I reach out my hand. Warren hesitates, his grip tightening on the metal handle. I do not break eye contact. I offer a soft, sweet smile that does not reach my eyes. Give it to me, Dad, I whisper, my voice so low that only he can hear it. Or I will scream the truth so loud they will hear it in the parking lot. His jaw clenches, but social preservation overrides his paternal rage. He releases his grip. I take the microphone. The metal is warm from his sweaty palm. I turn to face the ballroom. The low hum of chatter instantly dies down. The silence in the room becomes absolute and heavy. The catering staff holding trays of champagne freeze in their tracks. The band members lower their instruments. I do not tap the microphone. I do not clear my throat. I stand perfectly straight, holding my emerald silk clutch in one hand and the microphone in the other. I wait for 2 full beats, letting the anticipation stretch until the tension is practically vibrating in the air. Good evening, everyone, I begin. My voice rings out through the state-of-the-art sound system. It is completely steady. It is calm, elegant, and razor-sharp. I do not yell. I do not let a single ounce of anger bleed into my tone. I sound exactly like a successful corporate executive delivering a keynote address. For those of you who do not know me, I am Jada, Brianna's older sister. I know my father just gave a magnificent speech about family legacy and the heights of Black excellence, but I felt it was only right to stand up here and add a few crucial details to that narrative. After all, a wedding this spectacular deserves total transparency. I turn my body slightly, addressing table 1 where Charles and Victoria are seated. Connor parents are looking at me with polite interest. Connor is smiling, anticipating a heartfelt sisterly tribute. Brianna is gripping the edge of the sweetheart table, her knuckles turning white. First, I want to congratulate Brianna and Connor, I say, projecting my voice effortlessly across the massive room. Connor, you are joining a family that is deeply committed to maintaining its image at all costs. And Brianna, you look absolutely stunning tonight. That custom Vera Wang gown is a masterpiece. The floral arrangements, the imported orchids, the 10-piece band, the beluga caviar we are all enjoying this evening. It is all a breathtaking display of luxury. I pause, letting my eyes sweep over the crowd. But as my father just told you all, building a foundation of wealth requires incredible sacrifice. What he conveniently forgot to mention was exactly who made that sacrifice. I turn back to face my parents. Warren is frozen, standing a few feet away. Patricia has a hand clamped over her mouth, her perfectly painted lips parted in silent horror. You see, I am 35 years old. I continue, my voice dropping to a conversational yet chillingly clear register. For the last 13 years, I have worked 80-hour weeks building a career in commercial real estate. When I was 22, I bought a luxury condo downtown. I paid the down payment. I paid every single mortgage bill, property tax, and maintenance fee for over a decade. But because I was young and building my credit, my parents offered to co-sign the deed to help me secure a better interest rate. It was a technicality, a signature on a piece of paper. A collective breath seems to catch in the ballroom. The guests are starting to realize this is not a traditional wedding toast. The polite smiles are vanishing from the faces of the country club elite, replaced by confusion and dawning horror. 2 weeks ago, I say, taking a slow, deliberate step toward the head table, I returned from a grueling business trip. I dragged my suitcase to my home, but my key did not work. The locks had been changed. The building manager had to inform me that my parents had used that 13-year-old co-sign loophole to legally sell my home behind my back without telling me. A loud, audible gasp erupts from somewhere near the back of the room. I do not break my rhythm. I keep my voice completely even, holding the audience captive in the palm of my hand. They packed up my belongings and put them in a storage unit, I say, looking directly at Victoria and Charles. Their faces are pale. Charles has set his drink down. They sold the sanctuary I worked my entire adult life to build. They liquidated over $300,000 of my personal equity, and when I called them standing homeless in my lobby, they laughed over the sound of clinking champagne glasses. They told me to consider it a generous wedding present. I gesture expansively around the room, mimicking the exact motion my father used moments ago. So I want to properly thank my parents tonight. I want to thank Warren and Patricia for their stunning financial choreography. This ice sculpture you are all looking at, I paid for that. The imported caviar you just ate, I bought that. This entire $120,000 spectacle was funded entirely by the theft of my home. My parents did not spare no expense. They spared their own expense by sacrificing my shelter so they could impress all of you. The silence in the ballroom is no longer polite. It is suffocating. It is the silence of a catastrophic collision playing out in slow motion. Old money hates tacky scandals, and this is the ultimate display of social and financial depravity. At the head table, Brianna lets out a strangled, sobbing gasp. Connor drops her hand like she has burned him. He is staring at her, his face twisting in absolute disgust, as the reality of her family financial and moral bankruptcy crashes down on him. Warren lunges forward, his face purple with rage. "Give me that microphone, Jada," he hisses, reaching for my hand. I take a swift step back, evading his grasp easily. I hold up my free hand, palm facing outward, a sharp, universal command to stop. He freezes, terrified of turning this verbal execution into a physical brawl in front of his wealthy white in-laws. "Do not touch me," I say into the microphone, my voice echoing like a whip crack across the room. We are not finished talking about generational wealth. I turn my attention back to the crowd. My heart is beating a steady, powerful rhythm. I have completely dismantled their social facade, but the true destruction is still waiting inside the black envelope in my clutch. I have exposed the theft of my past. Now it is time to publicly execute their future. I hold the microphone close to my mouth. The feedback whines for a microsecond before settling into a crystal-clear hum. My father takes a clumsy step backward. His polished Italian leather shoes squeak against the dance floor. The illusion of the formidable patriarch is completely gone. He looks like a terrified old man who just realized he walked onto a battlefield without any armor. Patricia is gripping the edge of the head table so hard I can see the tendons straining in her forearms. She opens her mouth to speak, to scream, to do anything to reclaim the narrative, but her voice fails her. The social death she always feared is happening live in high definition. But I am not finished, I say, panning my gaze back to the sea of horrified guests. I told you I wanted to properly thank my parents tonight. Stealing my condo was just the first part of their financial choreography. The second part is actually much more impressive. You see, funding a $120,000 wedding with stolen equity was not enough. To truly secure their place in this room, to ensure they looked like equals to Connor's wonderful family, my parents had to go further. I reach into my emerald silk clutch. My fingers brush against the cool, smooth leather of the interior before grasping the stiff black envelope. I pull it out, holding it up under the glare of the chandeliers. You see, building a fortress of generational wealth, as my father so eloquently put it, requires capital. And when your credit cards are maxed out and your country club dues are severely in arrears, traditional banks stop returning your calls. So what does a desperate family do to maintain the facade of black excellence? They leverage the only thing they have left. I walk slowly towards the head table, closing the distance between myself and my hyperventilating mother. The guests sitting at the tables nearest the dance floor actually lean away from me, as if the sheer force of my calm is radioactive. 6 months ago, right around the time Brianna got engaged, my parents took out a secondary mortgage on their pristine 6-bedroom home in Oak Ridge. I explain, my voice ringing with clinical precision. They went to a hard money lender, a private equity firm known for predatory interest rates and zero mercy. They borrowed $250,000 against their primary residence just to fund engagement parties and keep their country club membership active. They mortgaged their permanent shelter for temporary applause. Gasps ripple through the room again. This time the shock is laced with deep, visceral disgust. I can see the senior deacons from our megachurch shaking their heads in absolute revulsion. Old money respects ruthlessness, but it absolutely despises financial stupidity. Charles and Victoria are staring at Warren with undisguised contempt. The illusion of a wealthy, affluent black family merging with their own legacy has shattered into a million jagged pieces. Connor has pushed his chair back from the sweetheart table, putting physical distance between himself and Brianna. But here is the real tragedy. I continue turning my back to my parents and speaking directly to the guests. When Connor family demanded a 50-50 split for this reception, my parents panicked. The condo money they stole from me was supposed to cover the wedding and make the balloon payments on that predatory loan. But they miscalculated. They dumped every single penny of my equity into the ice sculptures, the band, and the custom lace gown. They spent the mortgage money on table linens. I slide my manicured fingernail under the flap of the black envelope. The thick paper yields with a crisp, tearing sound. The sound echoes sharply through the microphone. Because they prioritized this party over their own survival, they missed their first balloon payment, I announce. Then they missed the second, and the third. They have been in active default for 90 days. I pull the thick stack of legal documents from the envelope. The county clerk's stamp is highly visible on the front page, gleaming under the ballroom lights. I work in commercial real estate. I remind the room, holding the documents up for everyone to see. I understand how private equity operates. I know that distressed residential debt is a liability for hard money lenders. So yesterday afternoon, I took a meeting with the managing partner of Vanguard Capital. I used the corporate accounts of my holding company to purchase the debt on the Oak Ridge estate. I bought the paper. Warren lets out a choked, guttural sound. It is half sob and half gasp. He stumbles, grabbing the back of an empty chair to keep himself from collapsing onto the polished wood floor. Patricia lets out a sharp, piercing wail, covering her face with her hands. The elegant, sophisticated matriarch is reduced to a weeping, trembling mess of ruined designer silk. I look directly at my father. My expression is completely void of mercy. I have spent my entire life being called a disappointment, being pushed into the shadows so his golden child could shine. I am standing in the light now, and it is blinding them. Thank you for the financial motivation, Dad. I say, my voice dropping into a lethal, frozen whisper that echoes through the entire grand atrium. You taught me that family is just a business transaction. You taught me to ruthlessly secure my assets. So I did. The documents in my hand are not wedding vows. This is an active notice of default. I turn my head, looking right at Brianna. The bride is trembling violently, tears streaking her custom makeup, ruining the flawless aesthetic she sacrificed my home to achieve. She is gripping the edge of the table, staring at the paperwork in my hand like it is a loaded weapon. Your house is officially in foreclosure, I state, the words landing like heavy stones in the silent room. You do not own the Oak Ridge estate anymore. My company owns it. And as the primary lien holder, I am executing my legal right to reclaim the asset. Consider this your formal notice. I am evicting you. The silence that follows is absolute. The kind of silence that happens in the immediate aftermath of a bomb detonating before the dust even begins to settle. The sheer magnitude of the devastation has paralyzed every single person in the room. They are looking at a family that has just been stripped of everything. Their wealth, their home, their social standing, and their dignity all eradicated in the span of 5 minutes. The wealthy white in-laws who looked down their noses at me during the rehearsal dinner are now staring at my parents like they are a contagious disease. I stand in the center of the dance floor holding the foreclosure notice. I feel no guilt. I feel no sorrow. I just feel the immaculate, satisfying weight of pure justice. The scales have been balanced. The debt has been collected. But I am not finished. I lower the microphone to my side, leaving the heavy silence intact. I have delivered the public execution. Now it is time to deliver the final lethal injection to the marriage itself. I fold the documents back into the black envelope and turn my attention toward table 1. It is time to have a word with the new in-laws. I place the silver microphone on the edge of the sweetheart table. It lands with a soft thud against the pristine white linen. I do not look back at my parents or my sister. Their silence is absolute, and I have no interest in whatever pathetic defense they might try to formulate. I turn my back on the wreckage I just created at table 2 and walk directly toward table 1. The sea of guest parts for me. Men in expensive tuxedos and women in custom gowns physically step back, pulling their chairs in to clear my path. The atmosphere in the grand atrium has shifted from a celebratory gala to the breathless, terrifying quiet of a courtroom awaiting a guilty verdict. The 10-piece band remains frozen on their elevated stage. The waitstaff stand paralyzed against the floral-draped walls, holding trays of champagne that nobody wants to drink anymore. I cross the polished dance floor, my emerald silk dress sweeping elegantly around my ankles. I am not rushing. I take measured, deliberate steps. I want Charles and Victoria to feel the full weight of my approach. I want them to have ample time to process the magnitude of the financial catastrophe they have just welcomed into their prestigious bloodline. When I reach table 1, Charles is already standing. His silver hair catches the chandelier light, and his jaw is locked in a tight, furious line. He is a man who relies on information to maintain control, and he has just realized he is the victim of a massive, catastrophic blind spot. Victoria remains seated, but her posture is rigid. Her hands are folded tightly in her lap, and the smug, condescending aura she carried at the rehearsal dinner has completely evaporated. She looks like a woman who has just discovered her designer gown is woven from cheap synthetic thread. Connor is standing beside his father. The golden retriever optimism has vanished from his face. He is staring at me with a mixture of shock, horror, and desperate denial. He wants me to say it is a joke. He wants me to laugh and tell him this is some elaborate theatrical prank. I do not give him that comfort. I stop at the edge of their table. I look directly into Charles' eyes. Yesterday evening at the country club, you asked my father about his investment portfolio. I say, my voice pitched low and steady so only their table and the immediate surrounding guests can hear. You commended him on his foundational wealth and his commitment to traditional family values. You believed you were forming an alliance with equals. You believed my parents were self-made affluent individuals who belonged in your circle. I reach into my emerald clutch one final time. I pull out a second envelope. This one is crisp, stark white, and heavy with the weight of certified legal documents. I do not hand it to Connor. I place it directly on the table, perfectly centered between Charles and Victoria, resting it right next to their untouched crystal champagne flutes. Charles looks down at the envelope, but he does not touch it. Victoria stares at it like it is a live explosive. Inside that folder is the absolute truth about the family you just legally bound your son to. I continue keeping my tone polite and lethal. You will find the complete chain of title for my downtown condominium, including the fraudulent transfer documents my parents executed to bypass my ownership. You will find the bank routing numbers proving that the proceeds from that stolen asset were funneled directly into the accounts of the floral designers, the caterers, and the venue coordinators for this exact reception. Victoria lets out a sharp, shaky breath. Her manicured fingers grip the edge of the tablecloth. The $60,000 my parents contributed to match your investment was not liquid capital, I explain. Watching the horrifying realization wash over Victoria's face, it was the stolen equity of their own daughter. But that is only the first section of the folder. The second section contains the public filings from the county court. You will see the predatory promissory note they signed leveraging their primary residence at a 30% interest rate just to clear their country club arrears before the rehearsal dinner. You will see the consecutive missed payments. And you will see the active foreclosure notice I just initiated. Connor steps forward, his voice cracking. Jada, please. Brianna told me her parents were liquidating a dormant rental property to help with the wedding. She told me they wanted to do this for us. She said your condo was just a family asset you did not even use. I shift my gaze to Connor. He is naive, but he is not innocent. He enjoyed the luxury of this wedding without ever questioning the math behind it. Connor, she lied to you, I state firmly. My sister has spent her entire life curating a narrative of Black excellence that does not exist. She wanted your name, your generational wealth, and your social standing. She knew my parents were drowning in debt, and she gladly let them strip me of my home so she could walk down that aisle looking like a princess. The woman you married today is morally and financially bankrupt. And as of tomorrow morning, her family will be officially homeless. Charles finally reaches out and picks up the white envelope. He does not open it. He does not need to. The sheer conviction in my voice and the absolute terror radiating from my parents at the adjacent table are all the proof he needs. He is a ruthless businessman, and he knows when he has been played. You praised my sister's articulation and our family ability to adapt to your world, I say, turning my attention back to Victoria. I watch her flinch at the reminder of her own microaggressions. You thought my parents were desperately trying to match your class. They were not trying to match you, Victoria. They were trying to survive you. They threw me to the wolves because they were terrified you would find out they are nothing but heavily mortgaged frauds living paycheck to paycheck. I take a slow step back from the table. The air around us is thick with the smell of expensive orchids and impending ruin. I highly recommend you have your family attorneys review those documents first thing on Monday morning. I advise, my tone shifting into pure corporate detachment. The legal fallout from the condominium fraud is going to be extensive, and I will be filing criminal charges for the forgery associated with the title transfer. You might want to consider how closely you want your family name associated with a highly publicized felony fraud investigation. Charles' jaw tightens. He looks past me, staring directly at Warren, who is still slumped against a chair at the head table. The look Charles gives my father is cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of mercy. It is the look of a man who is about to summon an army of corporate lawyers to sever a toxic limb from his family tree. I have given you the facts, I say, delivering my final words to the groom and his parents. What you choose to do with them is your business. But do not ever say you were not warned about exactly who you were marrying into. I do not wait for their response. I turn my back on table 1. I turn my back on the ice sculptures, the caviar, the imported lace, and the entire fraudulent spectacle. I have delivered the truth, and the truth has absolutely shattered their world. I begin my walk toward the grand exit of the ballroom, leaving my parents and my sister to face the devastating consequences of their own greed. I do not look back immediately. I keep my pace steady, the heels of my shoes clicking against the polished hardwood floor. But I do not have to see them to know exactly what is happening. The acoustics of the grand ballroom carry every sound with perfect clarity. I hear the sharp tearing of paper as Charles rips open the white envelope. I hear the heavy silence stretch for 5 agonizing seconds while his eyes scan the certified documents. And then I hear the sound of a crystal champagne flute shattering against the floor. I stop and turn around slowly. I have to witness the harvest of the seeds I just planted. Charles has thrown his glass. He is standing up, his face a mask of absolute freezing rage. He shoves the documents into Connor's chest. Read it. Charles commands, his voice carrying across the silent room. Read exactly what this family is. Connor takes the papers. His eyes dart back and forth across the legal text. I watch his face cycle through confusion, denial, and finally profound, sickening realization. He drops the papers onto the sweetheart table. They scatter across the white linen landing right next to the extravagant floral centerpiece. Brianna is shaking. She reaches out with trembling hands, trying to grab his tuxedo jacket. Connor. She begs, her voice shrill and desperate. Connor, please let me explain. Jada is lying. She is just jealous. She forged all of this. Connor looks down at her hands, gripping his lapels. He does not yell. He does not cause a physical scene. The disgust radiating from his body is far more devastating than any shouted insult. He looks at her as if she is covered in toxic sludge. You let your parents steal your sister home, he says, his voice echoing in the dead quiet of the ballroom. You lied to me about everything. You told me they were successful. You told me they were liquidating an investment property to pay for this. You are completely broke, Brianna. You are a fraud. Brianna lets out a desperate wailing sob. No, baby, please, you have to listen to me. I did it for us. I did it because your family expected a certain standard. I was trying to protect our future. You were trying to steal my family money to cover your family debts, Connor shoots back, stepping out of her grasp. You thought once we were legally married, my father would just quietly pay off whatever financial mess your parents made to avoid a scandal. You thought you trapped me. Victoria stands up. She does not look at Brianna. She does not even look at Patricia, who is weeping openly at table 2. Victoria simply picks up her cashmere wrap and turns to her husband. We are leaving Charles, she says, her tone vibrating with absolute aristocratic disdain. We are done here. Call the attorneys from the car. I want an annulment drafted before midnight. Charles nods once. He turns to his son. Let us go, Connor. There is nothing left to celebrate. They turn their backs on the head table. They do not say goodbye to the other guests. They walk away from the massive ice sculptures, the imported caviar, and the 10-piece band. Connor follows them. He does not look back at the woman he married just hours ago. He walks with purpose, eager to put as much distance as possible between himself and the radioactive fallout of my family lies. That is when the absolute pandemonium breaks loose. Brianna screams. It is a primal, ragged sound that tears through the elegant room. She hikes up the heavy layers of her custom Vera Wang gown and tries to run after Connor. But the dress was designed for gliding down a church aisle, not for sprinting across a ballroom floor. She trips over the cascading train of imported lace, falling hard onto her knees. Her perfectly styled hair falls into her face. She stays on the floor, sobbing hysterically, screaming Connor name. He does not even pause. The grand double doors swing shut behind the groom and his parents, sealing Brianna's fate. The shockwave hits the guests. The illusion of black excellence has been completely incinerated. The wealthy church elders, the country club members, the prestigious business associates, they all start murmuring loudly. The whispers grow into a chaotic roar of gossip and judgment. People are standing up, pushing their chairs back, grabbing their coats and purses. Nobody wants to be associated with a family exposed for felony fraud and imminent bankruptcy. The exodus begins. Dozens of guests are making a beeline for the exits, actively avoiding eye contact with Warren and Patricia. The 10-piece band on the elevated stage begins to quietly pack up their instruments. They know they are not getting paid for overtime tonight. The catering staff, holding trays of expensive champagne, stand frozen near the kitchen doors, unsure if they should continue serving drinks to a reception that no longer has a groom. The massive ice sculptures of the swans continue to melt water, dripping steadily into the silver basins, ticking away like a countdown clock on their ruined lives. Brianna is still on the floor. She stops screaming for Connor and turns her wrath toward me. She scrambles to her feet, her designer dress smudged with dirt from the polished floor. You ruined my life, she screams, pointing a shaking finger at me from across the room. You ruined everything. I stare back at her, completely unmoved by her hysterics. You ruined your own life, Brianna, I say, my voice carrying easily over the commotion. I just provided the receipts. I look at table 2. Patricia is sobbing into her hands, her makeup running down her face in dark streaks. Warren is clutching his chest, looking like he might actually have a heart attack. Their country club friends are walking past their table, pretending they do not exist. The very people they sacrificed my home to impress are treating them like a contagious disease. Their social standing has evaporated in a matter of minutes. The $120,000 spectacle has transformed into a spectacular graveyard. The flowers look ridiculous. The chandeliers feel oppressive. They traded my sanctuary for this exact moment of humiliating public exposure. I watch the guests scramble for the exits, desperate to distance themselves from the wreckage. I stand my ground, letting the chaos swirl around me, breathing in the sweet scent of absolute justice. The shift in my father happens in an instant. The crushing weight of his public humiliation violently morphs into pure, unadulterated rage. He spots me standing near table 9, completely untouched by the sheer panic gripping the rest of the room. The realization that I am the sole architect of his financial and social destruction finally snaps whatever fragile restraint he has left. He shoves past a fleeing couple, knocking a silver tray out of a waiter's hand. The crystal glasses hit the floor with a sharp crash, but Warren does not even flinch. He is charging directly toward me, his hands balled into tight fists at his sides. Patricia is right behind him. The elegant matriarch facade is entirely gone. She is hiking up the heavy fabric of her custom silver gown, stumbling in her designer heels as she rushes across the polished wood floor. Her face is twisted in an ugly mask of feral fury. They are coming for blood. They want to physically tear me apart for daring to expose the rot underneath their foundation. I do not take a single step back. I do not raise my hands to defend myself. I just stand there holding my emerald clutch, watching them barrel toward me like two desperate animals backed into a corner. Before Warren can close the 10-foot gap between us, a solid wall of dark fabric and broad shoulders materializes seemingly out of nowhere. 4 massive men dressed in immaculate black suits step smoothly onto the dance floor. They move with military precision, forming an impenetrable human barricade directly between me and my charging parents. The head of hotel security, a towering man named Mr. Sterling, steps right into my father's path. Warren slams into Mr. Sterling's chest, but the security chief does not budge a single inch. He merely holds up a massive hand, stopping my father dead in his tracks. "Sir, you need to step back." Mr. Sterling commands, his voice low, calm, and carrying the absolute authority of a man who throws out rowdy billionaires for a living. "Get out of my way!" Warren roars, his face turning an alarming shade of purple. He tries to sidestep the barricade, but 2 other guards smoothly shift their stance, blocking him again. "That is my daughter. I'm going to teach her a lesson she will never forget. Move." Patricia crashes into the back of my father, screaming over his shoulder. "You vindictive little monster," she shrieks, pointing a shaking manicured finger at me through the gap between the guards. "I will destroy you. I will drag your name through the mud until you have nothing left." I watch their meltdown with cold, clinical detachment. They have completely lost their minds. They truly believe they can intimidate me into submission using the same physical posturing and loud threats they used to terrorize me when I was a teenager. They do not realize that the power dynamic shifted permanently the moment I bought their debt. I had anticipated this exact reaction. 2 hours before the reception started, while my parents were busy posing for their fake luxury photographs, I took a quiet walk to the hotel management office. I introduced myself to Mr. Sterling. I handed him 5 crisp $100 bills and explained that a severe family disagreement was likely to occur during the toasts. I told him I would require a seamless, uninterrupted exit when the time came, and that under no circumstances was anyone from the bridal party allowed to follow me out of the building. Mr. Sterling had pocketed the $500 with a discreet nod. He is delivering on that investment perfectly right now. "Ma'am, we are ready to escort you to your vehicle," Mr. Sterling says, turning his head slightly over his shoulder to address me. He maintains his rigid stance, keeping my father contained. "Thank you," I say, my voice perfectly level. I am ready to leave. The security team flanks me in a tight diamond formation. Two guards lead the way, parting the remaining crowds of shocked guests, while Mr. Sterling and the fourth guard walk backward, keeping themselves positioned between me and my unhinged parents. It feels exactly like a high-profile executive escort. I walk out of the grand ballroom protected and untouchable, while the people who stole my home are held back like common trespassers at their own party. The sound of their screaming follows me toward the heavy gilded doors. "You are dead to us!" Patricia wails, her voice cracking with hysteria. "Do you hear me, Jada? You are no daughter of mine. We will never speak to you again." I smile as I walk. She is threatening me with a good time. Being dead to them is the exact prize I came here to claim. "I will sue you for every penny," Warren bellows, his voice echoing off the chiffon-draped ceiling. "You will never step foot in my house again. You are banned from our property." I do not bother turning around to correct him. I do not need to remind him that he does not own that property anymore. The eviction notice will be taped to his front door by Monday morning, and he will figure it out soon enough. Let him scream into the void. His threats are completely empty and utterly meaningless. The security team guides me through the heavy double doors and out into the quiet luxury of the main hotel lobby. The heavy doors swing shut behind us, instantly cutting off the sound of my parents' frantic screaming. The silence in the lobby is beautiful. It is thick and peaceful. Mr. Sterling walks me all the way out through the glass revolving doors and into the warm summer night. The humidity hits my skin, but it feels refreshing rather than oppressive. The valet already has my sleek black car idling under the grand portico exactly as I arranged. The valet opens the rear door for me. I turn to Mr. Sterling and offer a polite nod of appreciation. "Thank you for your assistance tonight," I say. "Your team was incredibly professional." "Just doing our job, ma'am," Mr. Sterling replies, offering a respectful bow of his head. "Have a safe drive home." I slide into the plush leather seat of my car. The heavy door shuts with a solid, comforting thud, sealing me inside my quiet, private sanctuary. The driver puts the car in gear, and we glide smoothly down the circular driveway, pulling away from the hotel and merging onto the brightly lit city street. I sink back into the leather seats. I take a deep breath, letting the cool air conditioning wash over my face. I look out the tinted window, watching the hotel disappear into the distance. I did it. I walked into the heart of their toxic empire. I dismantled their entire fraudulent existence, and I walked out completely unscathed. They tried to break me to use me as a stepping stone for their own shallow ambitions. But I just proved that I am the one who builds the steps, and I am the one who can tear them down. 4 weeks later, the dust finally settles over the wreckage of my family-fabricated empire. The fallout is not just severe, it is absolute and surgical. I sit in my penthouse office reviewing the final legal updates from Terrence, while sipping a cup of black coffee. The speed at which their lives unraveled is a testament to what happens when you build a fortress on a foundation of lies. Charles and Victoria did exactly what I advised them to do. They deployed their army of corporate attorneys first thing that Monday morning. Connor did not even speak to Brianna again. All communication was handled through merciless legal channels. The marriage was swiftly annulled within a month on the grounds of gross financial deception and fraudulent inducement. Brianna attempted to fight it, clinging desperately to the delusion that Connor actually loved her enough to overlook her family bankruptcy. She was painfully mistaken. Connor Old Money family viewed her as a massive liability and a con artist. They stripped her of her new last name, canceled all the joint accounts, and sent her packing. She walked away from that $120,000 wedding with absolutely nothing but a ruined Vera Wang gown and a mountain of unpaid vendor bills that creditors are now hunting her down to collect. But the annulment is merely the opening act of their destruction. The main event is the execution of the foreclosure. Obsidian Holdings operates strictly by the book. Terrence files the final eviction paperwork with the county court. There are no extensions. There are no grace periods. Warren and Patricia exhausted all their legal rights the moment they defaulted on that predatory hard money loan months ago. A week after the wedding, the county sheriff arrives at the pristine Oak Ridge estate. The sprawling 6-bedroom colonial with its wraparound porch and manicured lawn is officially seized. I do not drive out to the suburbs to watch them carry their belongings to the curb in cardboard boxes. I do not need the theatrical satisfaction of watching them weep as the sheriff changes the locks on their custom front door. I simply receive a digital notification from Terrence confirming that the property has been successfully vacated and secured. My holding company now legally possesses the asset. Warren and Patricia are forced to scramble renting a cramped, outdated apartment on the other side of the city with whatever meager cash they have left. They traded my downtown condo for a party, and the universe traded their mansion for a concrete box. However, the financial ruin is barely the tip of the spear. The true agony for Warren and Patricia is the complete and total incineration of their social standing. In their world, perception is reality, and their reality has become a toxic, radioactive wasteland. The Oak Ridge Country Club acts first. Country clubs despise public scandal, and financial insolvency is the ultimate cardinal sin. News of the dramatic wedding implosion and the subsequent foreclosure spreads through the wealthy suburban grapevine like wildfire. The club board of directors convenes an emergency meeting. Within days, Patricia and Warren receive a discreet but ruthlessly firm courier letter. Their membership is permanently revoked, citing conduct unbecoming and a failure to maintain their financial obligations. The exclusive dining room where they used to hold court sipping expensive scotch and pretending to be aristocrats is now permanently closed to them. Then comes the final, crushing blow. Grace Fellowship Megachurch. For decades, my parents used that church as a stage for their performance of Black excellence. They sat in the premium front pews, they mingled with the deacons, and they flaunted their perceived wealth to command respect from the congregation. But the megachurch is a business, and the leadership refuses to be associated with a highly publicized felony fraud scandal. When the rumors of the stolen condo and the bounced wedding checks reach the ears of the senior pastor, my parents are quietly but effectively excommunicated from the inner circle. Patricia is asked to step down from the auxiliary board. Warren is removed from the financial advisory committee. The very people they sought to impress now look at them with a mixture of deep pity and visceral disgust. When my parents try to attend Sunday service, hoping to salvage some shred of their dignity, they are met with cold shoulders and hushed whispers. The affluent friends who happily drank their imported wine at the rehearsal dinner suddenly stop returning their phone calls. The social exile is absolute. They are pariahs in their own community. In the weeks that follow, my phone blocks a barrage of incoming calls from unknown numbers. Voicemails left from burner phones pile up in my blocked messages folder. Some are furious, unhinged rants from Brianna, blaming me for ruining her life and demanding I fix the mess I created. Others are pathetic, sobbing pleas from Patricia, begging for financial forgiveness and claiming she is a victim of circumstance. Warren attempts to send long, manipulative emails about bloodlines and Christian forgiveness, demanding that I return the deed to his house because family is supposed to protect family. I do not listen to the voicemails. I do not read the emails. I forward every single piece of correspondence directly to Terrence to keep on file in case we need to draft a restraining order for harassment. They still do not understand. They think they can negotiate with the daughter they abused. They think they can gaslight the scapegoat into rescuing them from the consequences of their own actions. They fail to realize that the daughter they knew is gone. The woman who stood in that ballroom and dismantled their lives does not negotiate with parasites. I promised them I would handle exactly what needed to be handled. The eviction is handled. The annulment is handled. Their social destruction is handled. The ledger is permanently closed. I stand on the expansive wrap-around terrace of my new penthouse, 50 floors above the glowing grid of the city. The evening wind is crisp, carrying the faint distant hum of downtown traffic. I lean against the thick tempered glass railing holding a heavy crystal glass of vintage Pinot Noir. The space behind me is massive, easily triple the square footage of my old condo. It features soaring vaulted ceilings, custom mahogany built-ins, and a panoramic view that money can buy, but only absolute relentless determination can keep. I bought this property in pure cash. There are no co-signers. There are no legal loopholes. There is only a pristine, ironclad deed filed with the county clerk bearing exactly one name: mine. It has been 6 months since that night in the grand ballroom. 6 months of absolute unbroken silence. I changed my personal phone number the morning after the reception, completely severing the digital cord that tethered me to their chaos. I routed all family-related emails to a hidden secure folder that Terrence monitors for legal purposes. I have not heard my mother condescending sighs. I have not seen my father pompous posturing. I have not received a single entitled demand from my sister. The quiet in my life is not lonely. It is the most luxurious sound I have ever experienced. It is the sound of total, unadulterated freedom. For 35 years, I allowed society and cultural conditioning to dictate my obligations. As a successful Black woman, the pressure to uplift the family to pour my hard-earned resources into the collective pot was immense. We are often taught that blood is an unbreakable covenant. We are conditioned to endure financial abuse, emotional neglect, and blatant disrespect, all under the guise of family loyalty and respect for our elders. My parents weaponized that exact cultural expectation. They believed that because they brought me into this world, they had the inherent right to harvest my success. They thought my purpose was to act as the silent financial engine powering their shallow pursuit of Black excellence. But walking away from that wedding taught me the ultimate undeniable truth about bloodlines. Blood does not make a family. Blood is simply a biological coincidence. Real family is defined by loyalty, mutual respect, and the fierce protection of one another's well-being. Terrence is family. The ruthless mentors who guided me through late-night commercial real estate negotiations are family. The people who celebrate my ambition instead of hiding it in the shadows at table 12, those are my people. I have curated my circle just as meticulously as I curate my investment portfolio, and I refuse to tolerate non-performing toxic assets in either. I look down at the sprawling city lights stretching out for miles in every direction. Somewhere out there in the distant fading suburbs, Warren and Patricia are sitting in a cramped rented apartment stripped of their country club memberships and their megachurch prestige. Brianna is likely staring at the ghosts of her former affluent life, wondering how a $120,000 wedding transformed into a legal and social nightmare. They are living the exact impoverished reality they tried so desperately to run from. But the most beautiful realization of all is that I did not put them there. I did not destroy my family. They destroyed themselves. I simply stopped paying the ransom required to maintain their illusion. I stopped acting as the human shield between their reckless choices and the inevitable consequences. When you strip away the lies, the stolen money, and the designer clothes, they were always going to collapse under the weight of their own deceit. I just accelerated the timeline by refusing to be their sacrificial lamb. People often think that revenge requires malicious plotting, screaming matches, and bitter, prolonged warfare. They think you have to stoop to the level of your abusers to win. They believe justice requires a dirty fight. But true revenge is entirely passive. It is the profound, graceful act of letting toxic people consume themselves with their own greed, while you quietly and ruthlessly secure your peace. I took back my power by mastering the very game they thought I was too unladylike to play. I secured my assets. I protected my energy. I recognized my own worth when the people who created me refused to see it. I take a slow, deep sip of my wine. The liquid warms my throat, a perfect, bold vintage that tastes like absolute victory. The city hums below me, a vibrant living machine filled with endless possibilities and new commercial acquisitions waiting to be made. My future is an open, unwritten contract, and I am the only one holding the pen. I turn my back to the edge of the balcony and walk inside my beautiful empty penthouse. The heavy glass door glides shut behind me, automatically sealing with a quiet, definitive click. It locks out the wind, the noise, and the ghosts of my past. I walk across the heated marble floors, setting my wine glass down on the pristine kitchen island. I am exactly where I belong. I am safe. I am wildly successful. And for the rest of my life, I am finally completely untouchable. The most profound lesson from this story is that biology does not equal family. Society often pressures us to endure emotional and financial abuse under the guise of blood loyalty. However, true family is built on mutual respect, protection, and genuine support, not exploitation. You never owe your hard-earned success or inner peace to those who treat you as a disposable stepping stone for their own vanity. Setting ironclad boundaries isn't an act of revenge, it is the ultimate act of self-preservation. Sometimes the healthiest choice is simply walking away, letting toxic people face the natural consequences of their own deceit, while you unapologetically build an authentic life on your own terms. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to set a hard boundary to protect your peace from toxic relatives, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more empowering stories of reclaiming your worth.